Hi, and welcome to How to Tell Stories to Children. I'm Joseph Sarasi. I want to share an idea with you today, which is what I'm going to call planting a story. And when we talk about planting a story, what I mean is planting a story in a place, meaning usually like a physical object, though it can be a location, it can be all kinds of things. And what we're doing is we're using this basic tool of the storytelling loop. Um, which is that what we're doing is we're kind of finding something real, and then we're bringing that into a story. We're telling a story about this real thing, and what happens is that after the story is told, we're coming back to a new relationship with that very real thing. There are just so many applications for this, so I'm just going to share one with you today, which is I'm going to call planting a story. And I'm going to use the context of, it's summer and we're parents and kids are out there and they're having fun and they're hot, but they're also bored, right? So, your kids come in and, oh, I'm bored, and you get that like bored posture of like, I'm bored. So I'm like, I can't hold my body up anymore because I'm so bored. Um, you know, and we can react to that in so many different ways as parents, of course, because we can be annoyed and be like, oh, I have so many things to do and I don't want to be in charge of what, you having fun and stuff like that. But if we can see those sort of things as bids for connection, and intimacy and like shared experience. Of course, we can't give our attention to our children like all of the time, but when we can, um, it carries into the day. And so I'm going to use the example of a simple thing. Now, I don't actually have it in my hand, so I'm kind of breaking my own rule here. But a lot of us in the summer, we might have watermelon or watermelon rinds around, and so I'm going to invite that. Oh, look! Oh, did you see this like watermelon rind here? This is me talking to a child, right? Oh yeah, you know what? I know, I know exactly what you're talking about. I've seen that boredom before too, and so have a lot of people. A lot of us actually encounter that. You know what? Oh, I remember there was this one time I was out. It was after like we had a picnic or something like this, and actually a lot of people had cleaned up, and there was um, it was just, and the kids went home and other parents and stuff, and I was out like at a picnic table at the park somewhere, and I was in the last bit of cleanup, and there was a little bit, we had some watermelons, so there's this watermelon rinds laying them, and I'm picking them up, and I was cleaning them, putting them in a bag, and as there's this one little watermelon rind, and this little person walks across the edge of the table to that watermelon rind and leans on it. Now, my initial reaction is surprise, because usually people are like about my size, but this was like a little person. I don't know if it was an elf or a fairy or anything. It was just a little person, okay? And guess what that little person said? It just leaned on that watermelon rind like this and was like, I'm bored. I'm so bored. And I was like, hey, look, buddy, I don't care if you're big or small or what's going on with you. I got things to do. I got my own kids at home. We got to pack up and get to the car and blah, blah, blah. And good luck to you. But this little person was just so bored, and I had a little bit of compassion left in me, and I said, oh, have you ever taken like that watermelon rind on a trip? And the little person looked at me and was like, what are you talking about? And I said, okay, look, I have to clean up. I don't really have time. But I'm going to leave this one little piece of watermelon rind for you. You see that puddle over there? See if you can drag it over there, because sometimes interesting things happen when watermelon rind hits the water. And the little person was looking at me like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, well, I don't know, I gotta go. And so I did, I left. That was all that really happened. But I came back a few days later, and I was sitting at that same little table, and the person told me. It took this little person quite a while to drag that watermelon rind. It was heavy, and it didn't believe me. It thought that it was just going to be boring. Like, who cares? Like, watermelon rind and water, it's not exciting. But the little person, it wanted to have a good time. It was willing to try. So dragged that watermelon rind nearly to the puddle, but before it got there, it found a little like feather from a bird, and when it looked at the puddle, which was pretty big to that little person, and this little watermelon rind, it made that little person think of a boat, because it looked a little bit like this curved shape of a boat, and that little person got excited, and so they took that feather, and now it's big in their hands, and they're holding it, and the wind's blowing, and it's it's a little bit but they stuck it right in that watermelon, and whoa, like, just with that simple thing, they had like a little sailboat, and they were looking at it and going, whoa, it looked beautiful to them. Simple to us, but to that little creature, it was looking really lovely. And so they dragged it a little bit further into the puddle, and got it kind of halfway in, and pushed it in, and getting the little ankles wet and whatnot. And they climbed on board, and they pushed with a stick, and then finally, you just hit that floating, sailing on the water kind of feel. And that person was just out there, just sailing, holding on to the mast, proud, looking out ahead, sailor of their own domain. And the wind is blowing, and he could like turn that little feather just a little bit to catch the wind and push it in the direction. And that little creature, that little person, sailed all around that puddle, which was like kind of a big lake, and they could explore it. There was a little bit of an island in one section because there was a pile of sand, and they could kind of moor that boat on the island and get out and explore. It's like a deserted island. They even built a little fire right there, put it out, and then climbed back on the boat, and they were sailing around that puddle. And you'd think that that was the only thing that happened, and that was pretty interesting in and of itself. But then something else happened, because when they made a full lap around that puddle and came all the way back, it was like the puddle went, I don't know, they were traveling through, we don't even know what it was, and then all of a sudden, there they stood. They were a little nervous, hands on that mast, in that little boat, looking down, hearing the lapping waves. They're in that water, but they looked out, but everything was different. And in the distance, you know what they saw? They saw these mountains made out of giant crystals and things. And so it was, they turned the little thing. It was a little bit colder there, and it blew them to the edge, and they got off the edge, which looked like this weird crystalline beach. And they got off, but whoa, when they touched the ground, their feet were cold, because you know what it was? It was ice. They were in this weird, interesting ice paradise. And so they started climbing around. They were warm enough, right? And they had a sweater for some reason. And they're climbing around and looking at all these beautiful ice crystal mountains. And they are, wait a minute, how did we get here? I don't even know how this happened. And way, way in the distance, it was super safe, but they could see a little polar bear just kind of peeking its eyes over there. Whoa, there's polar bears here. And then they looked back over the water, and they saw like a seal head pop out of the water, and then even like the cool, slow back of a humpback whale just breaking the surface of the water. And that little person was like, whoa, I don't even know how we traveled here. This is pretty interesting. And but the polar bear looked like it might eventually get a little bit closer, so that little person got back on that little watermelon boat, pushed off that crystal, frozen shore, and was sailing and sailing around. And so same thing happened. All of a sudden, it all disappeared. They're traveling through air and time and space. We don't even know. And the person's holding on, holding on, holding on, and then opens its eyes. And this time, it was in this it was hard, it was misty. It was like cloudy. But the clouds were all kinds of different colors. So they're it's like they're in fog, but the fog was like purple. It was like this was purple rolling fog moving around. And over here it was kind of like orange and like glowing from the inside. So it was like really colorful. And the person was like, whoa, I'm in this huge misty field of color. And they sailed around, and they saw these different colors and different places. And they once again they landed on the shore. And here the shore was like, wow, it was like sand, but like grains of like every single possible color. And they got out, and when they got out, they met this like friendly caterpillar, and the caterpillar was sitting there counting the grains. The caterpillar was like, it was like 17, 18, 19, and it was taking just the blue ones, the blue grain, and it had like this beautiful pile of like blue sand, but it had like this pink one next to it, and there was a yellow one that was really huge. And the little person was like, why are you counting the grains of sand? And the caterpillar was like, well, I was told by the master story keeper that if I knew how many grains of different colored sands were here, that I would be able to perform various deeds of good service. I don't know, we're just making things up here. So, and then that little person got back on that watermelon boat, right? Got back on that watermelon boat and then traveled back through this like it was time and space. We don't know what it was. And then landed back in the park, same park. Looked out, picnic table, that little beach thing where he made a fire, and looked out and sailed up to the edge. And what that little creature did, that little person, realized, wait a minute, if I build myself a little boat, I can travel from different waters to like almost like different lands, and this is kind of amazing. And so now the person was tired. It was like, that's enough for today. And it was little. It was just a little guy. So, he could eat little bits of leftover hot dog buns and, little macaroni dishes. I mean, one piece of potato salad, that was enough for like 3 days for this guy. So, he nibbled a little bit and then was resting. And it was later on that I heard. And I mean, the number of adventures that little person went on with like a piece of watermelon, and a feather, was really interesting. Okay, now I'm going to pull back out of that story. I told it really fast and really quick because I want you to get the idea of it rather than me tell you a very fantastic. I mean, we could tell that story for half an hour to an hour easy, right? Or like, let's at least say that I could. What I'm trying to give you is this idea of planting a story in place. What we're doing when we tell a story like this with a child is that, and again, remember, we're entering with this, I'm bored, I don't know what to do, right? Maybe you have a watermelon. Maybe you don't. I'm going to give you some other examples here in a second. But if you're sitting at a picnic or at a gathering with family or just at home, telling a story like this, what it does is it plants a story in that watermelon rind, right? And it gives a child an opportunity to, after the fact, go, I want to build a boat. Whoa, maybe I can find a feather. Or if I can't find a feather, I could probably find a stick, And now they have that little boat. And maybe you have a puddle, or maybe you literally just have a bucket with water, or maybe you got a kiddie pool, any kind of water. You could, oh my gosh, wait a minute. We could set up little waters all over, and each each of them would be a different little land and place to explore. Oh my gosh, it could be it'd be like all the cups in the house are now full of water in different places. And that little boat, we don't even need a person. That little boat could travel from cup to bucket to bowl to pool to puddle to bathtub to whatever. Um, and and whoa, actually this child has this beautiful rich story and idea that they can explore. And of course they have this, like, you've shared some elements, so like maybe they're going to visit frozen land, but after a while they're going to create all their own lands and locations too. And if that place gets sort of like creatived out, we just need another cup of water, right? And this is the storytelling loop. This is planting a story in place in an object. And what we're doing is we're giving this shared time of connection with our child. We're telling that initial story, but we're also kind of like, in a way, it's like handing it to them, because they now have this creative place to explore. Whoa, a lot of children will get pretty excited about exploring all those different lands and setting them up on their terms and making 7 different boats and getting, different figures and dolls and whatever, and having them travel, and little seal pups, whatever little things that they have around. Could get very creative. If you have big bodies of water, like a little pool, if you have tiny little bodies of water, does not matter that much, right? That is the idea. And I'm giving you one example of like watermelon boat. Whoa, I mean, honestly, like there are thousands and thousands and thousands, and I will share a lot more over time too, because planting a story in place, boom, like even like right behind me, can you see this little like statue figure? That's Don Quixote. But like, I could tell a story about Don Quixote who gets up in the middle of the night and walks around and looks for snacks. All of a sudden we've planted a story in this physical place. Oh, we have a fern right here. Well, do you know about the fern forest? I don't know if you've ever heard about the fern forest before. Boom. And something magical happens here. I've also got the periodic table of elements. Because I'm kind of a geek that way. I'm not going to tell, but can you imagine traveling to every single element where each element was its own like special land with special magical rules of powers and things? Oh my gosh, I'm having so much fun right now. This is the storytelling loop. You're creating intimacy and connection with your child. You're also giving them a way to engage their own creativity. So it's so rich that it's more or less endless. I'm gonna end now, so that like, I want to keep these videos short, but hopefully you're kind of getting a taste of what I'm talking about. Practice these skills. You do not have to. I've been doing this for a very long time, but I'm not a professional storyteller. I'm just like a dad. I'm just a guy that I'm like, oh, I just want to like hang out and be with my daughter a little bit, and she's bored and I want to help her. You will develop good skills if you practice them. Practice it. It doesn't have to be like quite as amazing, but you can take the exact story that I just shared and use it on your own. Totally fine. I'm going to give you a few other things to do, to share. Look at this right here. Boom. We don't need a boat. It's just, have I told you about this, like this little boy that whenever he put on sunglasses, he could travel to another, land and dimension. And there were all these kinds of magical creatures there, or these whatever transforming robots. But then he would take them off and then he would be home. On, off, on, off, whoa. And then like, he could even like press buttons and he just traveled to all different kinds of places. So that, he could be in animal land. He could be in like, under the water. He could be in space. He could be in like, whatever, man, all you need is a pair of sunglasses. I like to go really crazy simple. Personally, I would love telling a story about a pen cap. This magic pen cap that a little creature could climb inside and would take them to like new planets. or the atmosphere was different, but they could breathe anyways, and it tasted like something for some reason. That magic pen cap. If you tell a halfway decent, doesn't have to even be good, halfway decent story about a magic pen cap that takes children and people or some kind of creature, that pen cap is going to travel all over the house with your child. It's going to get amazing. I like this one too. A little binder clip, magic binder clip that travels through time and space in powerful and interesting ways. And then whenever you clip it, you know, sherplink onto something with a little, maybe you've got a little creature puts in a hand, and they're like, it clips to that land and location. Magic binder clip, whatever. You know, another one is flowers. Man, you take the stem off this sunflower, it's a pretty good boat too. You know, a lot of children will love the idea of traveling on a beautiful boat that's made out of a stem. You know, we just need a little creature that lives on there or flies around on that boat, whatever. I just happen to, this is hilarious to me. I found these the other day. Look at these guys. They're even colored. I was so pleased when I found this. Look at this. These are 1.4 megabytes each. Look at these discs. But each of these, like if you're kind of computer tech people, whatever, boom, each of these is another like land to explore. And we could have a little creature that goes on the disc or in the disc. It does not matter, especially when you're talking about like, you know, younger children. Kids between the ages of like 3 to 8 will really probably get pretty deep into the exploration of these different lands and things if you give them. And like, man, I would love to give these to like a handful of kids and be like, well, each time you insert this in the mother tree, it reboots a new program. I don't know if you know about these guys. Like, this is old school. This is the old-ski moski right here. Just ideas. Planting a story in place. The storytelling loop. We start with something real. We tell a story about it. We end up with a new relationship to that very real thing. This is how to tell stories to children. I'm Joseph Saracey. Good luck out there.